All right, good morning. It's Bernard Nomberg with the Nomberg Law Firm here in Birmingham, and we're doing a special live discussion with my buddy Steve Altmann with Najar Dunnenberg here in town. Good morning, Steve. How you doing, my friend?
Good, Bernard. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me this morning, but we're going to be talking about a topic in your specialty that I think is going to be very important for a lot of people over the next. Oop, I forgot to hit record, so very
Recording has started.
very professional of me right now. But anyway, we're going to be talking about the impact of bankruptcy and divorce in the bankruptcy context mainly, because I know that's what you do and that's what your firm does a lot of. And with the economy being the way that it is and potentially really heading toward a real recession or not, we just don't know, because I don't know if the world's ever, specifically in our lifetime, but maybe in quite a long, long time, ever been in this position. So we just want to provide some answers for people who may be having those types of questions. So Steve, tell us a little bit about your practice and your firm before we dive into some of this.
Well, thank you, Bernard. Our firm has been around a long time. I've been working on bankruptcies for about 27 years, and handle consumer business bankruptcies representing debtors and creditors. You're definitely right. This is a difficult time for a lot of people. We anticipate there'll probably be maybe an uptick in bankruptcies at some point. The main thing is, want people to be cognizant of, it not to be rash, and not to rush into filing something right away.
Steve, you hit on a really good point there, in that it's too easy to have a knee-jerk reaction, the sky is falling right now mentality. And if I'm hearing you, and I think that's what we're going to get into a little bit, is people really should, instead of immediately making decisions, maybe it would be wise to step back for just a second and assess their overall financial situation. Maybe they can see a forecast into the future, or maybe not. But I want you to share with our audience, what are some of those things that people should be thinking about before they decide, I definitely have to do something like file for a bankruptcy, and those types of approaches.
Right. A lot of people, even though they're having a tough time, they really have to consider what their income is. Like, 'cause some people are maybe losing their jobs at this time, and things may get worse for them 6 months from now. You don't want to rush into filing a bankruptcy now, when, who knows, you may have additional debt because you can't, you don't have the income, or you're going to have to use your savings to keep up with your expenses over the next 6 or 7 months. Certainly the government is trying to pump in all these stimulus packages, which may be helpful to some, but you really have to look at what is your income going to be over the next 5 or 6 months. Are people going to use their IRAs to pay for expenses that come up, or are creditors going to give concessions? Maybe landlords may not be pushing so hard to collect the rent that for the next couple of months. So there are all kinds of things that may be helpful to people, and just rushing into a bankruptcy may not be the best thing at this time.
Steve,
I'm seeing.
Go ahead.
Now, I was just saying, I'm seeing a lot of people right now who are calling really just to maybe have me try to work out things with their creditors, and not file bankruptcy at this time.
Well, I'm going to put a link to your firm's website in our comments section here. So people after this, watching this, who are interested in reaching out to you, I'm going to be able to give them one of those ways to do so. And I know you've got some resources on the website and some handy information. But Steve, and we're talking consumer bankruptcies, and that's for individuals, right? I'm not talking about business owners right now.
Right, right. Yeah, consumer bankruptcies, primarily Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. Chapter 7, which is a straight bankruptcy that discharges all of the debt, or primarily the unsecured debt that individuals have. Chapter 13 is more of a repayment plan or a reorganization of the individual's finances.
Well, let's focus on that for just a couple of minutes. Chapter 7, that's my term, but I don't practice what you practice. I call that the wipeout, but
right.
I doubt that's the proper term, even nomenclature-wise. But what type of debts are typically permitted by the court to be wiped out or to be erased in a Chapter 7?
Well, typically you'll see credit card debt, medical bills. If you're surrendering a vehicle, maybe you can't afford to pay for your car anymore, or and you have a deficiency on an automobile that was repossessed or surrendered, then those types of debts are just wiped out. Other loans.
In comparison to that, Steve, what are the type of debts that typically in a 7 are not permitted to be wiped out?
Well, and so what you're not going to be what you're going to see are these domestic support obligations, which in a divorce decree, those types of debts, child support, alimony, debts that are created through the divorce or separation agreement. So those types of debts are not going to be dischargeable in bankruptcy. Sometimes some student loans.
Those are court ordered.
Right. Those are ordered by the court in a divorce decree, and so under the code, under the 523A5 code section, that's those types of debts are not dischargeable in bankruptcy.
And you were about to mention, I think, student loans, and as
Correct.
We're here today, being the 27th of March, who knows what in 2 weeks or in a month how the government's going to treat student loans given the economy. But historically, how have they treated student loans in a Chapter 7?
Historically, those are generally not dischargeable. There are circumstances based on hardships that will allow for a student loan to be discharged. But for the most part, those are not dischargeable. And of course, like you said, the stimulus packages that are coming out will provide, or are supposed to provide, some relief to individuals from student loans.
All right, let's pivot away from what I call the wipeout, the 7 chapter. Let's move over to the 13. We're talking with Steve Altmann in Birmingham, Nomberg, Denenberg. We're talking bankruptcies. The impact of divorce cases is being also put in there. But Steve, I want to talk about Chapter 13, consumer bankruptcies, not for businesses, but for individuals. What type of issues come up in 13s? What's permitted? What's not permitted?
Well, in Chapter 13, most people are simply repaying their debt over a period of time from 3 to 5 years. And in terms of domestic support obligations, if someone is behind on their child support, they are given an opportunity to repay or to pay what they're behind over that period of time. They'll have to continue to pay the child support on a regular basis. And so, but domestic support obligations, again, are not dischargeable in the Chapter 13 either. So if it's a significant amount that the individual is behind on their child support, then it would be something that would still be owed even after they completed their plan and received a discharge.
Now let's throw in a couple of additional factors here.
Okay.
Let's say we have a married couple. The couple is considering either separating or divorcing, and finances are a real issue. They're also considering either individually or jointly bankruptcy. So sticking in that same concept of consumer bankruptcies, Chapter 7 or 13, what is your experience? What have you seen when individuals either, an individual or with their spouse come to you for some guidance there? How do they approach that?
Well, one thing you'll see a lot is, if the couple comes in to see me and maybe, they're, contemplating divorce, you have to be careful. Again, if they certainly are in a conflict situation, then I cannot represent both of them. But it may be beneficial to them depending on what their income is. In Chapter 7, you have to qualify to file Chapter 7. So you have a means test that determines whether your income exceeds the median income for a family household size in Alabama based on your income. So it may be that they need to consider whether they qualify for a Chapter 7 because they make too much money as a couple. Maybe, if they were to get divorced, then they may both qualify for Chapter 7. So that will be determinative. Those are questions you have to look at to decide, when is the right time to file, whether it's better to file for divorce first or it's better to file for bankruptcy first. And when a bankruptcy is filed, if there is a divorce already in place, then there is the property of the estate cannot be divided in the divorce court. Mm-hmm. So there's a stay in from the bankruptcy that keeps the divorce from going forward as to the division of property. A divorce can continue on in other ways, but it can't divide the property that's in jurisdiction of the bankruptcy court.
Well, and Steve, I guess it really does take some specific planning by a couple or an individual. Like you said, you've got to factor in all of this when deciding, is it economically better for you to file for the divorce versus the bankruptcy? And they really do collide at times. Now, go ahead.
No, there's one other thing I was going to say about that is the exemptions. Individuals, there are certain exemptions that you're allowed to have in bankruptcy, and it might be better to have the exemption totals that you can get as a couple mm-hmm. versus individual filing.
Now let me throw another factor into our equation here.
Okay.
Let's talk about any impact, in your opinion. What if I'm a small business owner and I'm going to eventually qualify for one of these emergency SBA loans, or I'm getting from the economic stimulus package where assuming it gets put into place where individuals or households are getting some money paid by the government? Are those going to be, and again, I know this is brand new law. If the ink is still wet, assuming it's been signed, it may not even have been signed just yet.
Yeah, I don't think.
But have you thought about any impact of any of that monies coming in to either through the SBA loan to the small company or the economic stimulus money coming into the household? Does that impact any of the bankruptcy filings?
I think it will. But it's hard to say really what, how it's going to impact. I think it may allow people to delay their filings if they have to. I think that's certainly the hope of the government with their, doing the stimulus is, to help people in a not have to file. At least not right now. certainly you never know what's going to happen, 6 months to a year from now, but I think that's the intent of the stimulus package.
Let's talk about those individuals who are already in a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13, and they've either been furloughed from their employment for a period of say 90, 120 days, whatever the company's decided, or they've been laid off completely because of economic turndown with the company. How does the loss of job, the loss of income, impact current Chapter 7 or 13 applicants?
It affects the Chapter 13 debtor tremendously right now. They are in a position where they may have to file a motion with the court to stop their payments, basically or reduce their payments. There are all kinds of things that the Chapter 13 debtor, it's actually called a motion to suspend. And, they may have to look at that in the meantime. And I think the courts are looking at that right now. I think they're, going to, there's actually a proposal that I just saw. It's coming. It hasn't gone through yet, but they're looking at it where they may extend the number of years for debtors from 5 years to 7 years to give an extra couple of years for repayment. As an option, so that, because at this point, Chapter 13 debtors, they may be out of a job and they may have their cases dismissed without some kind of concession from the courts or from creditors. So, that's what I think may happen.
And would it be fair to say that for anybody who's either in bankruptcy or considering bankruptcies, being proactive, not reactive, would be the best course of action? And what I mean by that is, if you lose your job and you're in a bankruptcy, wouldn't it behoove you to get in touch with your attorney to let them know that so they can help protect what's already in place?
Absolutely. There's no question, better to be proactive. The courts appreciate that. And, that's something that, we ask of our clients, certainly if they're in Chapter 13. It really doesn't impact so much in Chapter 7 because, again, once you're in that type of a case, it's, if you've already lost your job and you're already in Chapter 7, there's not going to be much of a change. But again, that may be more difficult for them because if they do incur more debt, they cannot refile again for 8 years. Oh. So that's one of the laws that they're not allowed to you can only file Chapter 7 once every 8 years. So if they're already in Chapter 7 and then all of a sudden they've lost their job, now they're going to be in a bind, even more so.
Well, Steve, before we get concluded with our talk here, tell folks who are watching, how can they get in touch with you or your firm?
Certainly they can reach out to me by phone, 205-250-8400. Also, you can contact me by email, which is saltman@najar.com. And our website, najar.com, is also, anyone can reach me through there as well.
Steve, and I really appreciate your time and your expertise and your patience in explaining this, because it's a very unsettling time for really all of us. And just providing some answers, I think, helps to reduce just a little bit of stress for people who are either stuck at home or stuck mentally in how to proceed. And just your guidance right there, I think, is just so needed. So thank you for that. I want to wrap up our talk here with, I want you to share some thoughts with people who are sitting at home and they're looking at their checking account and their savings and all of this, and they really just can't see through all of that for the big picture down the road. It's very easy, I think, to look at the next 2 weeks or 2 months, but I want to look at 2 years and 10 years out. And no, we don't have a crystal ball, but you can do the best that you can to be proactive, to protect yourself. So what are some things some people should be thinking about, say, in the next 60, 90 days that'll help impact them, a year from now or so?
Well, I think it's important to, like you said, I think to step back and not panic, and really just assess, how your household operates, or how you run things in the house. If you have to cut back on a few things, maybe, cutting back on cable, or cutting back on different things that maybe you can, save money here or there. And then, if things really get bad, if creditors are suing you, and they're threatening foreclosure, or they're threatening to repossess, if it gets to that point, then certainly, you want to do what you can to avoid that. But reach out to a lawyer, or reach out to, get some help with your creditors. You can certainly call the creditors themselves. I think they'll be willing to work with you at this time, certainly over the next 2 to 3 months. And they should be able to get some kind of relief from the creditors directly, without having to go through a bankruptcy right now. But that's the main thing, is just to be proactive, and just to try to do things to minimize the impact later.
Well, Steve, thank you. I appreciate your time. I know that it's an unsettling time for all of us, but it's valuable information. Your website is in our show notes, and hopefully folks will reach out to you. Thank you guys again for spending a little bit of time with us. On Monday, I'm going to have another such similar discussion with attorney Greg Brockwell, and we're going to be talking about SBA loans and other funding to help small businesses, which also includes the new CARES Act that's being contemplated right now. So thank you guys. Thank you, Steve. And my friend, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch up with you another time.
Thank you, Bernard. I appreciate you.